Our next speaker has traveled here all the way from the Milan, Italy area, just northeast of the city. During the winter, he loves to spend his time in the Alps at his family's chalet, skiing with his 19 and 15-year-olds. And then during the summer, he likes to play tennis and bicycle. So he's a pretty active guy. His team here from BorgWarner, all kind of sitting right in the middle of section 2 here. They've been working very, very diligently on crafting a global rollout plan. Mr. Andrea Amatori has been with BorgWarner for 17 years now, last 6 years in product reliability. He's had a couple expatriate type of jobs over in Japan and in the US to help the team with their efforts. Prior to being with BorgWarner, he was with SMC for 10 years. So, Andrea, I think I've got you covered. Yeah. Will you please help me in welcoming Mr. Andrea Amatori?
Che gioia la notte, ti ho visto ballare, puoi ridere di gusto senza malignità. La gente se vuole sa essere feroci.
Can everybody hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. Okay, Jeff, thank you very much for that great introduction. I would like to talk about these topics here today, our application of Auros in Morse systems engineering. So I'll talk about first about BorgWarner and Morse systems, a quick introduction of who we are. I'll touch on where we had left it off 2 years ago. 2 years ago, we had a colleague of ours, Nat Wayman, who presented here. And so I'll bring that back up for as a quick reminder where we had left it off. I'll talk about what we have done in the last 2 years and some details about how we have set it up, Auros to work for the Morse environment in our systems and product development process. Some early successes, and then what we're planning to do moving forward. I don't need any introduction because Jeff did it all for me. So I'll move on to a quick introduction about BorgWarner. BorgWarner, our mission is to be a leader in propulsion systems, combustion, hybrid, and electric vehicles. Of course, we come from the combustion part, but in the last years, we have been there's been a very strong push to get also in the hybrid and the electric vehicle sectors. And so we have now product areas that also cover those sectors. There are 29,000 employees across the globe, 66 locations and 17 countries. And last year we had a revenue of $9.8 billion. We're a very diverse or balanced geographically company, so we've got 23 locations in the Americas, 19 in Europe, and 24 in Asia. So that was BorgWarner. Morse Systems is a business unit of BorgWarner. We have 5 business units. We are about 4,000 people and 18 locations and 10 countries. This is the product line, and it's relevant because this is what we applied Auros to. We are tier 1s for the OEMs. We make engine timing systems, so the timing chain, the chain control systems, the variable cam timing, as well as drivetrain chains, transfer case drives, transmission final drives, off-axis hybrids, and conventional and CVT. As well as solenoids and actuators that you see there. The newest products areas are battery charging and P0 tensioners. This is the last slide of presentation, but it's relevant because it shows the engineering locations that we have where we have engineers, and this footprint has been applied to Auros. So Auros was applied to this footprint here. So we've got a couple of locations, big locations here in the U.S., Auburn Hills and Ithaca. We have two locations, one location in Germany, Ludwigsburg. In Italy, we have Arcore near Milan, that's where I'm from, and a new location, Lugo, that just became part of our company. We have two locations in Japan, in Nagoya and Nabari. We're in Shanghai, in China. Two locations in Korea, Pyeongtaek and Chungju. And finally, we're also in India and Chennai. We have engineers there. So as you can see, we are a pretty diversified group. Geographically, we're kind of spread out across the globe. Okay, so where we had left it off 2 years ago. 2 years ago, as I said, there was a colleague of ours that presented here. And it all started really 4 years ago. BorgWarner has a bi-yearly survey in which it asks all engineers and employees, how is our culture doing? And one of the issues, or one of the points that came out is that our PDP process, PDP meaning product development process, was thought by the engineers to be too bureaucratic, too disjointed. A lot of work that was done without any value add, and the knowledge did not flow from location to location as well as it could have. The design guides were difficult to find, were difficult to understand, especially for people who didn't speak the English language. So that was one of the main motivators for this project. And of course, the second one was, which is endemic to the way we are, so spread out, is to foster knowledge sharing and growth. The fact that we are so spread out, it creates it creates a logistical hurdles, but at the same time can be a very powerful advantage because we've got ears and eyes everywhere in the globe. So those were the two objectives that 4 years ago a team was tasked to do. So that team was made by my colleague Nye Wayman, as I said. Joe Gustav was part of that team, who's here today, and Joe has been our change agent throughout this project, providing drive and direction to it. And yes, so Joe and Nat and the rest of the team looked at a lot of software that was out there. These is all the ones I looked at, and they follow a very rigorous process. So these are the finalists, and without going in details about what were all the attributes that they looked at, one of the main reasons that they chose Auros was that the ease with which we were able to bring knowledge to bear on our projects. So that it would help and guide the engineer going through his activity and his projects. So this was one of the main reasons. Another reason was that once you had enough projects in the database or the module, you were able to do the opposite. So you were able to go and look how well is your knowledge serving your projects. And so you were able to keep updated that knowledge and always fresh and make it grow, as was one of the objectives. So this ability to bring knowledge to bear on the project and then to improve the knowledge based on our experiences with the projects was one of the big drivers for deciding to use Auros. Okay, so then once that decision was made, and it was a decision made very consciously, as you can tell, and with the agreement of all the engineering organization, including directors and VPs, then the team started off a pilot, and without going into the details, they ran a proof of concept to make sure that everything was as said and as discussed. Okay, so that was how we had left it off 2 years ago. So what have we done in the last 2 years? This is where we are now. Basically, we have rolled out Auros. We started off in April in some locations and in some product groups, and we ended a couple of weeks ago with the last location and the last product group. Auros is being applied to 220 between product engineers and designers. the 7 product lines I showed you before and the 10 locations that I showed you. The main focus of Auros for us, as I said, is the product development process. So that is what we are running now in Auros. And in order to run the product development process in Auros, of course, we brought in the lessons learned database as well as the design guide, the product design guide. We apply Auros, if you look at the bottom part there, both for customer programs as well as design programs. We tend to develop a product and then ideally apply it to a customer. So we have 2 very different steps of or sub-processes when everything goes as planned. And so we apply it to both. So now Auros has become, for these 220 people, very in a way, very intimate with the way they work, because they will use it every day as they go through their activities, engineering activities. Okay, so a quick look at how we got there. One of the main tool that got us to launching Auros and getting it ready for our environment was this core team of very senior and experienced engineers that each one of them was the subject matter expert for their product groups. And with this team, we met every week through Skype. It was meant to be 1 hour for 1 week. Then it turned out to be more than once a week and more than 1 hour. There was a lot of discussion that we did, very useful discussion, of course. And so it became quite a lot of work and activity, but this was the core team. So, and the main tool of us getting Auros to enter into Morse. So the people of this team are here, so I just name them. Joe Gustel, as I said before, Dean Russo, they looked after the chain products. Paul Fremantle for the timing system components, Brian Asperger for the timing system applications, Michael Jones for the solenoids, and Mike Schisman for VCT. And so this was the core group, together with Sean McEvely, who was instrumental in supporting us at every step of the way. Sean is the application engineer that is assigned to us, and so he has been with us throughout this activity. Okay, so that was the main tool. We had face-to-face workshops. We had one of three days where we invited also management, top management, and we made sure that we got their feedback, very strong feedback, but also that they were understood in which way we were going. And also there were quite a few informal workshops, especially in Ithaca. We had another tool was the key users. So we decided to have one key user per product, per location. And so that person will become kind of the lightning rod or the first line of help for his group and his location. So yes, we brought them up to speed. And they were the ones that actually gave the rollout to their group in their language for their product. We had product group teams also, because as we were developing Auros for Morse, and by the way, developing doesn't mean any code or anything. It just means looking at the tools that Auros has and choosing the ones that are good for us and combining them in such a way that they fit the way that we work. So creating the extended elements, the templates, making sure the assessments are what we want, and so forth. So these product group teams were formed quite naturally, because as we were developing Auros, we found that a lot of the knowledge was not updated. It was not maybe as precise as we wanted, was maybe not as easy to understand, especially for people that did not speak English as the first language. And so, but mainly it was a need to make it more precise and more useful. And so each one of the subject matter experts of the core team became kind of a leader in their groups to get this implemented, to improve their knowledge. And this is an activity that took quite a long time, and it's still going, and it's ongoing. It's probably going to go for a long time, if not forever, in the sense that it's in continuous improvement. And then finally, we had the steering committee. So, of course, we needed to keep updated the directors, and we met with them. Just a couple, what we had to do was to first bring into Auros our design guide. And that's what we did. If you look on the left here, these are for each product, we have in Sharepoint these, what we call bins, that contain the information, that is the product information that we have. So lessons learned, checklists, DBPR guide files, DVMA guide files, and so forth. So we brought those into Auros, and we decided to split them up into KPACs for checklists and for lessons learned. So each checklist item is a KPAC, each lesson learned is a KPAC. For the other bins, we instead opted to not split them up yet, but to have a KPAC associated to that document, to each document. So once we had done that, then we looked into our getting Auros to run our PDP, product development process. This is it. This is the product development process we have. As I said before, we have development and application with phases and gates, like I think most of us do. So this ESO means engineering sign-off. It's a gate. And then these are the phases. So for example, for application, we have ESO K1, the first gate, then stage K1, then gate 1, and so forth. So as we were doing that, as we were bringing into Auros or setting up Auros for holding our product development process, we found out that we were able to segment the reviews into many assessments. So that, for example, before, when we used the normal tools, SharePoints and the like, when we ran an assessment, all the information was put together into one single location. But now with Auros, we were able to split them up into different assessments. And so that allowed us to, when we needed to, for example, bring forward a particular part of the assessment. So if we had to launch a tool that had a long time at delivery, then we would, we can now run an assessment before all the other assessments are run. So we have this extra flexibility now in Auros. A few statistics about where we are now in terms of number. We have 177 users. We quickly moved to 220, which is our max capacity for Morse engineering. As of now, that will be the total number of people. We have 8 community of practices, 1,580 KPACs, 284 assessments, and 371 issues. Now, the assessments and the issues, they're going to grow very quickly in the near future as we move into full production. Okay, so some points about how we set up Auros for Morse. So we have 8 COPs, as I said, and we have 1 COP for each product or technical area. So we would have arm and guides, actuators, and chain products. This is a KPAC. We haven't made particularly cool KPACs yet, basically because we want to make sure that the information is simple, is clear across the globe, and anyway, so that's where we're standing right now. We're using the tools that Auros provides. So it's images, we write the requirements. We use value tables, and we link documents to the KPACs. This is an example of a value table. The numbers are, of course, doctored. It's technical information, but it gives you an idea of how, how we use the value table. So they're very simple. In this case, we're asking for a clearance requirement to the engine, and then the engineer reports that value. or in the other case, we're asking, are we using the common bolts that we would want to use for commonality? Since we wanted to make Auros for sure a one-stop shop for the engineer, we have created links to that link to our team center. So, for example, to our PLM. So, for example, this is a link to a drawing guide file, so the engineer goes on the KPAC, clicks on it, and gets to the PLM system. The same for design procedures that are in SharePoint. With the KPAC's extended elements, we've tried to keep the same environment in Auros that we have in SharePoint, and so we have used the KPAC type extended element as that allows you to group KPACs and to display KPACs in groups, such a way that what the engineer sees in Auros is very similar to what he sees now. So this is the design guide that we have now, and this is what he sees in Auros. So there is a one-to-one correspondence. The same for the check sheets that we use for product development. This is the check sheet the Excel check sheet that during the review, the gate he needs to go through, and then we have repeated it right here in Auros. The extended elements we've used a few without going into detail. The ones that are general to all are the ones that are about the product technology, so that when we run an assessment, we just get the products that we want. The KPACs that we need, as well as the ones tied to the phase. So we have a extended element that indicates the phase for each KPAC, so that we just get the KPACs that we need for that phase. It could be that one knowledge packet is needed for early in the program, but not late in the program. So we have that ability. This is a project template, and it's very simple. And the reason that it's so simple is that since we have many products, some are for engines, some are for drivetrain, and it's not so easy to just use one single template to fit all these different projects that are very different in nature. Since Auros has just one template for the project, so we have put that information in the assessment header or in KPACs. So the project header is very simple. This is how an assessment looks. There's not much to say here. It's a line item sheet with assessed KPACs. The assessment header, this is how we set it up. We wanted to make sure that all the approvers we would have a record of everybody who had approved. So we had to create these many approval types, and with a newer version of Auros, that will change. We'll be able to get a team inside as approver, and we'll not need to have all these different approval types. But that's the way we're doing it right now. And we created also extended elements of the header to indicate details about the assessment. For example, who are the teams, the teams that attended that assessment, as well as what is the rating that we provide that phase. As I think most of you, we have a rating system that we use to say whether the assessment has been passed or has been passed but needs to be redone because there are issues to go through and so forth. So we have that risk number there. This is the evaluation process that we came up with, the KPAC evaluation process. So the engineer goes into the meeting having pre-assigned all these ratings here. They indicate whether we're meeting the criteria, we're not meeting the criteria. And then during the meeting, they come out with this criteria. And there is a new one here that is not here called deviated. And this we use when we are not meeting the criteria, but we still want the project to go on because we feel there is not a high risk. At that point, the chief engineer can choose to deviate it and move forward with the program. This is just a view. It's hazed out because there was some customer information, but it's showing a list of the ESO issues. ESO is engineering sign-off. So whenever we have an assessment, the team comes up with an action list. And so for each one of the actions of the action list, we write issues, and those issues are then followed through by the engineer and brought to conclusion. We came up with 4 different types of ESO, with issues. One is this type here, which is the one I just talked about. The other one is called decision, and if there is a criteria that we're breaking in the program that is particularly important, then we send that off to the director for director approval. We have another issue called Auros system issue. Those issues are the ones that we, as a core team, use with Sean and the Auros people. If we have a concern about or some fix or some improvement, we ask for the software. And finally, we have this knowledge update issue here. So anybody in the engineering community can raise it and sends it to the subject matter experts for him to evaluate any change to the knowledge. Then the subject matter experts makes the change, gets it approved by management, and then the sender closes off the issue. We are using team boards, and the first impressions from engineers is that they're very useful because team boards allow the engineer to manage his project. Team boards are project-based, and so all the information about the project is contained in the team board that he's looking at. And so far there have been positive comments about team boards, and a lot of engineers, practicing engineers, are using them. We're using, for example, here we see the different assessments, the open issues, and the project page. Look across is a functionality of Auros that from the beginning we thought it was very, very powerful, and we're starting to use. Now, there is not much to say yet on our side since we just started, so we don't have that much history to say, to start making a lot of assessments of the knowledge itself. But the look across will be used in the future for 2 reasons. One is for internal benchmarking, so the engineer will be able to go and check, for example, this particular case, and again, the numbers are not the true numbers. For this particular case, how did other programs do? And also, it will help the subject matter experts to assess the knowledge and improve it with the experience of the program. Reporting is another functionality that we're looking into very closely right now, and we're learning on how to use. This is an example of an application of reporting in which we, as I was saying before, we have assessments for each product. So in this case, these are all the different products and assessments. And with this report, the application engineer is able to see his team, made up of product engineers as well designers, how many, how well they're doing in terms of, in terms of how much work they have been done and how much still they need to work on the CAPEX, as well as where are the issues, where are the ones that are red and they need to dig into. So we think this is going to be reporting a powerful tool as we learn to use it. This is just an example. Okay, in terms of early successes, so one is the speed issue. 7 years ago we implemented PLM across the globe, and we had a lot of issues with speed. So that was one of my personal main concerns, but I think for most of us was speed. How was something as intimate in the lives of engineers as Auros, how was that going to function in the day-to-day operations? And so far, we're definitely pleasantly surprised. There is, I wouldn't say that there is no concern at all, but there is definitely no negative feedback from any locations, including, for example, India, that traditionally has been one of the most difficult or slower network locations. So that, to me, is an early success. Common Auros operating procedures, that is, I explained about that before. More consistent engineering practices, we're starting to see that. We're forcing that through the visibility of Auros. Updated higher quality knowledge base, I already talked about that with the teams that are working on that. Engineering community well-trained and supported. There's still a lot of work to do, of course, but by and large, the engineering community across the globe is trained and is capable to use Auros, of course, with support. And finally, Auros proponents at all levels, engineers, managers, chief engineers, and directors. So overall, across the organization, we do have proponents at all the different levels. So with that, right now, we have momentum. So it's, in that sense, it's going very positive. Okay, moving forward. So things to look at as we move forward and to monitor closely. One is a learning curve in using the tool, because something as pervasive, let's say, as Auros is in our way we work in engineering, requires, it's not a one course shot that you learn how to use it. It's really a process over time, over month, to gradually learn it and apply it to your work in many different facets, from the engineering perspective, the managers, and all the different roles. So that is something that definitely we as a core team and we'll be looking at really closely and keep on fostering. The impact of standardization, formalization on our organization. This one is a bit of a subtle point, but it's definitely there. So with Auros, everything becomes much more visible. So, and that means in a way formalization. Before, across the globe, we had standards and things people needed to do. But since the visibility was very low, also the level at which the activity was done was really not under, could change, based on the engineer, the program, and so forth. Now with Auros, everything is very visible. And so we have formalized that activity. And in a way, we have also standardized it, because before maybe we had locations like China and location like the US, very different in terms of customers, in terms of program, in terms of risk. So China, for example, as I think most of us know, has, in the automotive industry at least, there is a lot of engines that are they're benchmarked off other engines in Europe or the US. So the programs and the timing is much faster, which is a different environment compared to, let's say, Europe and the US. So now with Auros, all the informal flexibility of interpretation, let's say, it's becomes much more visible. And so we have standardized the way that we do work in Morse. And that's something to be of course, cognizant about, and something the team will need to look into and assess, okay, how that standardization working across the different global locations. And okay, now another thing to monitor is to change the way that we work. Auros allows us to do much better planning compared to what we did before. So as I showed you in that report, ideally, now we're kicking off, or the engineer prepares for the gate 1 week or 2 weeks before the event. But with Auros, it makes much more sense to kick off the assessment at the beginning of the phase and then follow through and build up on the CAPAX with the team, so that when you get to the gate, it's basically everything is done, ready to be assessed. And that is, of course, something that it's a change from us. And it's something that we'll also need to monitor as that is happening and see how to help it. Finally, another thing to monitor the performance of the software as use grows. And as I said, Auros is pervasive now in our organization. It needs to work 24/7 across the globe. And so this is something that with Sean and the Auros guys will be monitoring very tightly as we continue using it. These are some expected results that we are expecting. It's too early to say that they are in the bag, so they're not in the success slide. But at our viewpoint right now is what we see coming, and so maybe we'll be able to report on that another time. I'll just read through them because I think most of them are kind of touched upon already. So effective project planning and coordination among project team members, consistent engineering practices and more rigorous designs, project issues brought early to the management team, reviews better matching program timing, high quality knowledge base, powerful internal benchmarking, and rapid technical learning by more inexperienced RUs. Okay, and so into the next steps. Well, very simply, we'll plan to turn off the Sharepoint design guide now that everything is in Auros. It's coming up. Then we'll be integrating with Morse program management Auros application. We have our program management colleagues, Matt Barron from program management is here, are also implementing an Auros application, and they are using our baseline or our assessments as part of the program management pilot, in the sense that the milestones of product engineering are part of program management. So there is going to be that integration that is coming up, and from the engineering point of view, will be supporting. We're looking into creating KPACs for the DVPR and DFIMA documents. So right now, as I said before, the DFIMA and DVPR are still documents, but the plan moving forward would be to depackage them and create KPACs. So each line item of the DVPR would become a KPAC. Joe and Dean have already started that with their in their COP. So that's coming. And also, of course, explore other opportunities for Auros within Morse engineering systems and processes. So we're meeting once a week with Sean to look into new ways of using Auros or deepening our understanding of it. And so we're looking into new things. For example, now we're looking into maybe creating a product bookshelf database that would allow the engineer to quickly find what products and what components we have already in production across the globe, to try to limit the number of parts that we make, and other things. So yes, so these are the next steps that we're working on. And with that, I think that's the end of the presentation. So any questions? Coming.
Thank you, Josh. Hi, Andrea. I have a question. You mentioned that you started this 2 years ago, correct?
Yeah, we started the development phase 2 years ago. But the selection phase was like 4 years ago.
My question is, based on the maturity chart that we saw a few moments ago, what was the assessment? Which level do you think BorgWarner was at the time? My personal opinion is that it was fairly high. We devoted quite a bit of time about 10 years ago in developing the product development process, even though the engineers said it was too bureaucratic, and indeed it was. But there were pretty clear guidelines that we were using across the globe, as well as the design guide that we have in ICE. It was developed over many years by a lot of engineers. So I would say that we're pretty well, definitely we need an improvement, but we're pretty well set up, I think, compared to maybe other companies that I've seen. I would say we're kind of a bit higher than the average in terms of having that databases, that knowledge out there developed.
Good morning. Thank you. Excellent presentation. With your global rollout of this, there are regions of the world, let's just say, that are very lax with IP protection. And you're putting all your IP into Auros. How are you protecting that IP and keeping it from being extracted and disseminated to other people who might benchmark your system?
Yeah, so, and of course, here I didn't show any of the technical aspects. They're indeed very, very private. And in general, in Morse, we have always tried to foster collaboration between different regions. So within product engineering, there are no barriers, no matter what the region in which the engineers are working. So we've done that with PLM, and we're doing that with Auros. Now, the other aspect of it is, what about someone getting in the system and being able to take information out, and so that's well, of course, the security systems in Auros, as we have been told, are pretty strong. So right now we're not planning to add any other security device, but definitely that could be a good discussion point if we feel there might be that risk.
Yeah, good morning. Thank you for the nice presentation and sharing the experience going through this. You mentioned about the design procedures still being kind of maintained, and their one-to-one correlation to Auros system is, but then later on you talk about maybe eliminating those design procedures. Is that what you think is going to be the future, that you will not actually need to have those design procedures and then just stay with the Auros tool?
Right. Definitely, we're not going to eliminate the design procedures. Now, what we have now are design procedures in Word document or Excel documents that are stored separate from Auros, and we have a link that links from the KPAC goes to the design procedure. Now, the next step could well be to bring those documents into a KPAC, so recreate the same Word document in a KPAC. So we eliminate but the procedure will remain there. Yeah.
I had a question about, for any particular engineering task, there's a broad pyramid of information. So you've got, in our case, ship specifications, discipline-specific work procedures, work instructions, tribal knowledge, and tasks. We've got this big, broad pyramid of information. So how do you drill down on a specific KPAC to get just the requirements needed for that task? And how much effort does that require?
Well, it depends on, we started off in a way advantage, because I was saying before, we have a pretty well designed design guide. So we already had in Excel checklists that would require that the engineer meets specific criteria that are particularly important. So that activity had already been done before. Definitely, it's a long process, and it requires experience and engineers to really identify what are the key points that we want to specify as criteria that need to be met, as opposed to this is just information that you need to read and review it, but there is no particular requirement there. So it's really, for us, it has been a group work of experienced engineers over quite a bit of time.
Good morning. Thanks for the presentation. I'm curious about what you're finding within BorgWarner for rolling this out beyond Morse. Are there other business divisions looking at this? Were you allowed to do this within Morse with the BorgWarner corporate leadership watching, or what's the prospects for beyond Morse?
Right. So this activity is really Morse specific. So it was driven by Morse and it's more specific. Of course, we are part of a bigger family, and everybody is kind of running into the same issues as we were. So there is quite a bit of interest, and I internally already presented the tool to a couple of other business units, and they are thinking about it. So that's as far as we are. That's where we are. Yeah. Thank you.
All right. I think that was probably one of the more detailed presentations for people who have been to the conference over a number of years, right? Andrea, thank you for sharing. There's a lot of good information in there. And Andrea's been a very gracious host over in Italy, hosting other companies to come see him and help them learn about what they've been doing in Auros. So thank you.